This is Reynolds Podcast, The Creative Mindset. Hi everyone, welcome to The Creative Mindset, a podcast about what the future holds at the intersection of creativity and technology. I am Rei Namoto, the founding partner of I&Co, a global innovation firm based in New York and Tokyo. In today's episode, we speak with Julie Channing, the former and original CMO and the global VP of marketing of Allbirds, an early pioneer of the direct-to-consumer business movement of the last decade. Julie is an old colleague of mine from my San Francisco days between 2005 and 2010. She's a marketing leader with a track record of building and nurturing world-class brands. She's currently an independent consultant and fractional CMO working for various brands and startups. In part one, we talked about what it was like to build a brand from scratch. If you haven't listened to that episode, please have a listen. In part two, we talk about challenges she faced and how to overcome them, as well as very useful personal pieces of advice for anyone working in the marketing and branding industry. So let's get started. Yeah, what are the top, say, 3 skills that you think today's marketer in 2023 and beyond should have?
Top 3. I would start with being incredibly curious. The world of marketing is changing at such a rapid clip. And, the trends and tactics that were the mainstay of your plan last year are no longer relevant. And the thing that actually keeps me excited about being a marketer is the fact that there's so much to be learned, not only in our industry, but from, culture and call it sports, art, you name it, that looking outside of your world actually helps you approach your job very differently. And so that curiosity, that desire to continuously learn is, I would say, the most important skill that you need to go into being a marketer with. The second is probably having the ability to balance art and science. Back in the day when marketing and advertising really emerged, it was seen as this emotive storytelling platform where you were just sort of trying to win the hearts, minds, and wallets of your consumers through really compelling storytelling. And then we entered into this era of big data, and suddenly this pendulum swung, and it almost created this tension between, well, are you a brand marketer or are you a growth marketer? And I think that what was lost in all of that was that the best marketing is a combination of the two. And you might excel in one or the other, but you can't negate one or the other, or you're only half of a good marketer. And so I personally, on the one hand, as somebody who would describe myself as more of a true brand builder at heart with a very sound digital backbone, I'm so happy to see that some of the privacy changes that have come about recently have put the emphasis back on the power and importance of great storytelling first and foremost, because I think it was starting to become a little bit of a lost art. Equally, I'm so excited as a marketer that I have access to all of this incredibly valuable consumer data that helps me and my teams pull out actionable insights from which to build the rich storytelling. So you have to embrace both. It doesn't mean you have to be an expert in both, but you have to understand the relationship and be able to speak enough of the language to bring those two things together. Mm-hmm. And then I would say the third for marketers in particular is just being so collaborative, collaborative to your core. Marketing sits at the intersection of a lot of different parts of the organization. You need to have a really close relationship with your product team, with your finance team, with your data and analytics team, et cetera, and knowing how to be a good team player, knowing how to understand other people's, goals and figure out a way to support their goals while keeping the consumer at the center of every decision you make. That is an art unto itself, but I think the most successful marketers are those who understand the importance of that collaboration in order to be effective in their roles.
That's a great list, by the way, that curiosity, balance of art and science, and collaborative to the core. I love the way you articulate it. And I've heard different versions of this, but I don't think I've heard them articulated in simple ways and together. So I'll keep that in my mind as well.
Well, Ray, I am a marketer. I'm a storyteller.
Exactly. As an individual, what was the most challenging and the most fulfilling job I don't mean like a position, but specific thing that you've done as an individual?
Well, definitely building a brand from the ground up was very challenging and a highlight as well. But I think we've talked plenty about that. So the one that genuinely still to this day in my career sits on the shelf as perhaps the most complicated project I've ever been a part of, but also the most rewarding, was one that happened when we were at AKQA together, which you might be very familiar with, which is the Lost Ring, which we did for our client McDonald's.
Oh, wow.
Back in 2007, 2008. So I'm definitely going back into the archives. But I'll tell you again, for as many things as I've gone on to do since then, the amount of complexity associated with that single project, as well as the amount of innovation that was baked into a single project is still, I think unparalleled in terms of other things that I've tackled.
Yes. And
PJ, who you just had on recently, was very instrumental in that. And, just to give the listeners a very clear sense of what we were dealing with, I was the senior account director at the time. It was for the McDonald's global organization and in support of their Olympic sponsorship for the 2008 Games in Beijing. And the brief was amazing. The brief was basically, how can you help us unite young adults worldwide using our Olympic sponsorship as the conduit? And, PJ, being the crazy storyteller and visionary that he is, was very instrumental in the concept that they ultimately chose, which, again, as the account person, I was like, okay, we'll take it in, but this is pretty crazy. And the concept was pitching them on this idea of an alternate reality game that would be played over the span of 4 months in real time, online and in the real world. And the narrative arc was that there once was a sixth ring as part of the Olympics logo. And this ring mysteriously disappeared, and we were going to conduct this game with young adults all over the globe to help us discover what happened to it and why. And it was just so wild. It was so out there, and they bought it. And, it was the one project I worked on for 20 months, a single project. It was 20 months from concept to execution, which did culminate at the Games in Beijing, and I did get to go. So that was amazing. And there were so many firsts. There were so many unknowns. We've worked with this world-renowned game designer, Jane McGonigal, on it. This was very early in the world of social. We used Twitter as one of our primary platforms for communication. I think Twitter had been around for 12 months at the time. We convinced McDonald's to kick this project off unbranded. So we're convincing them to spend many millions of dollars on an initiative that we're saying, but we're not going to let anybody know that your brand is behind it to start, which again, just so much trust that they gave us that was the right thing to do. But it resulted in Fast Company coining the term dark marketing after our program, and the fact that we started in an unbranded way and slowly revealed, and that just created so much more brand love and support of the initiative. And it was phenomenal. I mean, it was so challenging to deal. I say it was the most complex because I had the good fortune of working with the McDonald's global organization, the IOC, and the Chinese government all in one go. So talk about learning the art of contingency planning. I mean, we had plan A, B, C, D, and E for that project. And, but it was so fun. It was just the energy of the unknown and trying new things. And I feel like I personally developed so many skills through that, and a willingness to just try new things. And it was fun. I think everybody who was a part of it had their moment of I got to get off this train. But at the end of the day, you felt like, wow, we're doing something really revolutionary here.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing it. This is not about promoting the food. This is about using the brand's voice and strength to create an experience for these young adults that's unparalleled and that celebrates what the games are all about in the first place, which is bringing the world together. So yeah, I would say still, I probably have a scar or two from that one, but it was worth it.
I hadn't heard of that story in a long, I was there. I didn't work on the project directly. I was sitting next to him, like quite literally next to him, and seeing day in, day out, week in, week out, and month in, month out, as you said, 20 months. Yeah, so I remember fondly of that time and the kind of things that we were trying back then. And it was in the nascent days of social media, way before Instagram, way before TikTok. So yeah, and yeah, you don't see that kind of marketing as much as we used to nowadays, do we?
No.
It seems like people are looking for much more quick things, quick hits. And, TikToks that go viral, Instagram Reels that go viral, and you just move on to the next thing and just looking for that next quick hits, feels like.
Totally. Yeah, that would be a way harder sell today, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it probably wouldn't fly. It wouldn't fly. Yeah. Well, I guess off the back of that story, that was, 15 years ago almost, you've probably earned a few more scars and a few more medals a lot more medals since then. But when you are going into and when you are in the midst of really challenging situation, what are the things that you keep in your mind? It might be easier to say now that you've gone through different phases of your professional life and personal life. So what are the things that you keep in mind to get through those tough times?
Yeah, if I could have a conversation with my younger self, right? There's some of this advice would have been really helpful. So it's funny, actually, there was an article that was recently circulating with some folks that I work with that was just talking about what it takes to be really effective amidst the ever-changing landscape that we work in today. And one of the things in particular talked about being like water. And I think it might actually come from a Bruce Lee quote, if I'm not mistaken. But it really resonated with me. The whole concept was around water is always water. Like it doesn't change necessarily. It's true to who it is, but it also finds its way around obstacles. And there was just something really beautiful about that analogy that made so much sense to me and how I still, apply it in how I'm approaching my work and life at large right now. And I think that one, just this mantra of be like water. Don't change who you are, but adapt to your surroundings. I think that's a really, really important lesson.
Yeah, it's a famous black and white, I believe, clip of an interview of Bruce Lee, how water can be devastating when it's going down to a big stream or just a dripping onto a rock and making a dent over many, many years kind of thing. So it's a very beautiful prose that he recites.
Yeah. I think it's a really powerful idea for sure. Because like we talked about, this world that we're living in is ever changing, and just knowing who you are, but then being able to equally be adaptable, I think is just so critical, especially in the face of challenge.
Right.
You know this about me, Ray, but I grew up playing competitive sports, and I am such a big fan of team sports and all of the lessons I took from that in my childhood into my adult life and career. And so I think another one is like, don't go it alone. It's easy to think about, your own little world and the challenges that you're facing. And I think it's important to stop and remember marketing is a team sport. And you have a network of people around you. And I've heard people say to me, oh, you should, as I got a little bit further along in my career, like, who's your personal board of directors? And at first I thought that sounds so formal, but then I started to understand, surround yourself with the people who are going to really create that, foundation of support and being able to bounce ideas off of and being vulnerable with. And, we all have fears and voices in our heads and those types of things. But I think those voices get louder when you think you have to do it all on your own and the world rests on your shoulders. And so that's my second one, is just don't go it alone. marketing is a team sport.
I like the idea of having a personal board of directors. I hadn't heard that before, but yeah.
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 Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah.
And then lastly, and this is maybe something I've embraced in the last couple of years of my life, which is the power of breath. Just breathe. I started doing meditation a couple of years ago, and I never realized how much control I could have over my mind and my body by controlling my breath. And one of the techniques that I've adopted from that, that I've shared with other people, and it really works, is there's a type of breathing called a box breath, where you breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 4, you hold for 4, and you just kind of like, you can even trace it with your fingers. Just doing a series of the box breaths can like bring you back to center and remind you like, and it's going to be okay. We're just marketers, like it's important, but it's not that important. And I feel like being able to have a tool that gives you presence of mind and an ability to put things into perspective, because, I have had some very high intensity roles, and I've worked for some very ambitious companies, and that can get overwhelming. And to learn the power of your own breath to bring you back to a place of calm is something I wished I had learned earlier in my career, quite honestly. But it's definitely served me well in the last few years of my life.
Those were some philosophical as well as very practical pieces of advice that I can use myself as well. So thanks for sharing them. Do you think about your next chapter? How do you deal with it?
Yes, I do. And I think that, like the other people that you speak to, it's one of those things that I'm constantly asking myself, is this the right thing? What's next? What should I be doing? What kind of brand should I be working on? Should I be working for myself? Et cetera, et cetera. And so I left Allbirds, back to the midlife crisis, Allbirds comment, my peer group thought I was having a midlife crisis because that was so outside of the norm for me, going to this nascent, not even established company relative to what I'd done. For me, as we talked about last time, it was rounding out a new skill set, that an experience I hadn't embarked on before, and mission accomplished. And so I guess the way I would answer your question now is I think about it all the time. I'm 2.5 years into doing my own thing. And in that 2.5 years, I've, taught an online education course around brand building in partnership with Section 4, something I never thought I would do and was terrifying, but hey, I did it. I have worked with a number of different brands in a fractional CMO capacity. I've a handful of advisory roles, and I still talk to recruiters and entertain opportunities for full-time CMOs if a full-time CMO role, if the right thing came along. Like, I think where I am at this stage of my life and career is that I'm a continuous learner, and I like to push myself out of my comfort zone and try new things. And that's what this last 2.5 years has been for me. I think what I've learned in now being, in this industry for, dare I say, 25 years, even though I only look 25 years old, right, Ray? Is that looking back, like my career has kind of been consistently different. I've worked in so many different industries, stages, agency side, brand side, et cetera, that the red thread is trying new things. Yeah. And so for me, while I constantly ask myself, should I be doing this? Is the grass greener over there? At the end of the day, I come back to a place of feeling a sense of comfort in knowing that what I'm doing right now is new for me. It's challenging me in a new way, and it's building a new set of skills, and I'm building my network in a different way. And this is a really important point, and I've found a way to do all of that while still having found a way to balance other parts of my life that are really important to me on a personal level that have been neglected at different parts of my career. And, I talked last time about, I have 2 children. I'm coaching my daughter's soccer team, which is something that I would never have had the time to do. And it's really important and meaningful to me. And so
wow.
Yeah. And this period of my life, is affording me the opportunity to do that. And so I just think for people who are going through those questions in their own minds and thinking about, am I doing the right thing? Or, the shoulda, woulda, couldas, just getting comfortable with the fact that whatever you're doing right now is totally fine, because it doesn't define where you have the opportunity to go in the future at all.
Well, I mean, the fact that you're coaching your girls' soccer team and having played a soccer game with you, I know, I know how amazing you would be as a coach, and how driven you would be as a coach, having played and getting my ass kicked. I still remember that. I still remember the moves that you had on the pitch. I still remember. Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah.
They're only 10. I have to go easy on them.
I guess so. I mean, the level that you used to play is amazing. So. That was part 2 of my conversation with Julie Channing, a marketing leader with a track record of building world-class brands such as Levi's, Nest and Allbirds. So here are my 3 key takeaways from my chat. Key takeaway number 1, be water, my friend, which was a quote from Bruce Lee. Key takeaway number 2, don't go it alone. And key takeaway number 3, have a personal board of directors. The first point, be water, my friend, as I mentioned, it's a quote from Bruce Lee. Be adaptable, be kind when you need to, and be strong when you want to. Number 2, don't go it alone. This, when I heard from Julie, it reminded me of my time with Julie at AKQA. During one of the summers, we had a company picnic and we were playing soccer outside. And her background actually is a very competitive athlete and a soccer player. I believe when she was in high school, she played soccer competitively on a team. And her moves was so good. I used to play soccer when I was in high school as well. And I was taken aback how skilled and how amazing her moves were as a soccer player. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the team that she played in the US was so good that some of the players on her team went on to play for the national team and play at the World Cup. So that's how good she was as a soccer player when she was in her youth, and that must have played into her professional life. And not going by herself, don't go it alone was her advice. Number 3, have a personal board of directors. She talked a little bit about taking a risk when she was going from Levi's to Nest, which was a startup, which was acquired by Google. But more importantly, when she went from Nest as part of Google to Allbirds, as I mentioned, she was employee number 1. So the company didn't really exist at the time. And she consulted with her board of advisors and board of directors whether she should take a risk or not. And eventually, she ended up taking a risk, and the rest is history. So having a personal board of directors can go a long way. So to summarize, key takeaway number 1, be water, my friends. Number 2, don't go it alone. And number 3, have a personal board of directors. So this was the second part of my conversation with Julie Channing, and talking about her journey as a marketing executive and her personal advice on careers. Hope you found them useful for your work and life. I'm Ray Namoto, and this is The Creative Mindset. See you next time.